Welcome to your midweek cybersecurity executive briefing, brought to you by Clocktower Technology Services and the United Regional Chamber of Commerce. I'm Brian Sulo, your virtual CISO for the next 15 minutes. My company is Clocktower Technology Services, and we provide IT, telecom, and information security services to businesses with 10 to 100 employees. But this isn't a sales pitch, so if you want to learn more about what we do and how we do it, give me a call, send me an email, or catch me on LinkedIn. Today is Wednesday, November 17th, and it's time for cybersecurity news and takeaways that you can use in your business today. I'll keep the InfoSec jargon to a minimum, but if there's anything you don't understand, please ask me to clarify at the end of the presentation if you're attending live, or in the comments section if you're watching the recording. Now let's get to this week's news. And before I begin, I just want to remind you that last Tuesday was Patch Tuesday for Microsoft, Adobe, and many others. So make sure your Windows, Adobe, and your Google Chrome browser and whatever other browser you're using are up to date. I'm not going to cover those separately in this presentation because they happen pretty frequently. So first up, an article on ZDNet warns of Excel files being used to compromise systems, especially in the financial services sector. Microsoft Office documents can contain macros. Those are user-generated programs that can not only manipulate data in the document, but can also interact with other files and the operating system. Modern versions of Office only allow macros in files with particular extensions. For example, the standard Excel file extension is XLSX, while the extension of files that allow macros is .xlsm. However, the older document format, which for Excel has the extension of .xls, can still be opened in modern versions of Office and can contain macros. There are several layers of defense that can and should be applied to defend against this sort of attack. Number 1, make sure the default settings in Microsoft Office have not been modified. You'll find these under File, Options, and then Trust Center. Number 2, ensure your anti-malware defenses are up to date. Number 3, in your inbound email protections, make sure you're blocking all Office file types that can contain macros. This includes the newer formats of .docm, .m, .xlsm, .xltm, .xlam, and many others, as well as the older formats that are just .doc, .ppt, .xls, etc. And finally, train users not to trust or open Office files from unknown sources. Email protection company Barracuda published a blog post this week detailing what they're calling bait attacks. According to the post, a bait attack is when a threat actor sends an initial email to determine the status of an email box or the recipient's willingness to communicate. A bait attack email will often consist of a very short message like "Hi," or have no content at all. A bait attack can glean a lot of information for an attacker. If no non-delivery report is returned, the attacker can assume the address is valid. If an out-of-office message is received, the attacker can learn information like the recipient's phone numbers, email addresses of colleagues, the recipient's full name and title, and other info about the recipient's actions or whereabouts. This information can be used to craft more sophisticated attacks. If the recipient replies to the message, the attacker can use that as an opening to continue the conversation. An ongoing conversation will be more likely to slip through email filters. According to the article, quote, Just over 35% of the 10,500 organizations analyzed were targeted by at least one bait attack in September of 2021, with an average of 3 distinct mailboxes per company receiving one of these messages. End quote. Defending against bait attacks involves ensuring your email filter is up to date with the latest tactics, and training employees on this threat, including what they should and shouldn't put into an out-of-office message. Intel this week disclosed 2 high-severity vulnerabilities that affect the BIOS firmware in several processor families. The affected processors are listed here, and some are quite recent. The current Intel Core generation is 12, and these vulnerabilities affect generations 10 and 11. These particular vulnerabilities require physical access to the system in order to be exploited, but that's not always the case with every vulnerability. The article wisely points out that motherboard vendors, who are responsible for releasing the firmware patches for BIOS vulnerabilities, do not continue to develop new patches for older products. This is one of the reasons we recommend that computers get replaced after 5 years at the most. Our friends at Krebs on Security report on the hoax emails that were sent from the FBI this week. It's a sobering reminder that the bad guys don't have to compromise your actual email server to send emails that come from your domain. In the case of the FBI hoax, the emails originated from a legitimate FBI system that the attacker tricked into sending email with arbitrary content. This meant that any inspection of the email headers would indicate that this message really did come from the FBI. So here's a quick primer of how email works, how we protect against these sorts of things, and how these protections can be thwarted. First of all, email is inherently insecure. There is no authentication or verification built into the email protocol. This means anyone can send a message purporting to be from any address at any domain. To combat this, we use a variety of tools and methods. The most important being validation protocols like Sender Policy Framework, or SPF. SPF and a couple of other protocols like it, which I'll just refer to as sender policies, allow a domain owner to specify exactly which servers are allowed to send email on their behalf. Now, this doesn't stop fraudulent emails from being sent from other places, but it should, if the recipient's server is configured to honor these protocols, it should prevent the recipients from receiving messages from non-authorized servers. The nature of these sender policy protocols means that any server that can send messages from your domain must be specified in these records. If not, the messages from them won't go through, or shouldn't. Many organizations have systems other than their email servers that send email. For example, their website might send email when a visitor registers their address. They might use marketing tools, billing tools, or CRM systems that automatically send emails to contacts. All of these systems have their own vulnerabilities, and a threat actor who can manipulate them to send email from your domain can get you into a lot of trouble. They could send fake invoices, fake change of remittance notices, or other phishing attacks to your clients, vendors, or employees, and they would not look any different to the recipient than a legitimate email, because they'd be coming from a legitimate server. So this is a very real threat. So in addition to making sure your sender policy protections are configured correctly, you also want to reduce your attack surface by turning off the email capability of any system that you don't actually need to email from. In the case of third-party billing, CRM, and web hosting services, make sure that they are capable of keeping their own systems secure, as their vulnerabilities are your vulnerabilities. Yet another WordPress plugin vulnerability has appeared. This one is in the WP Reset Pro plugin, and I have no idea what it's actually supposed to do, but it's aptly named as it allows any authenticated user to completely reset the site. WordPress is a great platform for building very complex, highly functional websites, but that functionality comes with a price. If you're building your own WordPress site, you're essentially building a web-based application, and you must keep up with the vulnerabilities and patches for not only WordPress itself, but whatever plugins you've added to the site. WordPress is not a set-it-and-forget-it environment. Earlier this month, the FTC published a two-step process for small businesses to prevent ransomware. Step 1 is to make sure your IT team is following best practices. Step 2 is security awareness training for all employees. If your employees aren't enrolled in continuous security awareness training, they really need to be. It really can save your company. ThreatPost brings us a report on the latest tactics being used by phishing campaigns to bypass email filters. Among the techniques highlighted are the use of tiny font sizes and links hidden within the HTML formatting of the message. The ugly truth is that weeding out bad messages from good ones is a really, really hard task for a computer. The best filters use what's called natural language processing, which attempts to analyze the contents of a message and make a determination based on machine learning. Unfortunately, these systems can be tricked, and the bad guys are always finding new ways to trick them. So, as tired as I am of saying it, this is another example where security awareness training beats technology, or at least complements it. Bleeping Computer is reporting on a distributed denial of service attack against Voice over Internet Protocol, or VoIP providers. Against VoIP provider Telnix. This is just the latest in a wave of DDoS attacks against VoIP providers. A DDoS attack is made possible by what are known as botnets, large numbers of individual systems in locations around the world that are under the control of a malicious actor, who can trigger the systems to all start sending traffic to a particular location on the internet. The recipient can't keep up with the flood of traffic and is essentially taken offline until the attack stops. Taking a page from the ransomware playbook, DDoS attackers have started demanding ransoms from their victims. With botnets having millions to tens of millions of devices under their control, these operators have effectively created internet Death Stars capable of taking down just about anything they care to aim at. Corporations with major online presences are able to protect their operations from DDoS attacks by utilizing services from companies like Cloudflare, who specialize in DDoS mitigation. But this technology is not applicable to VoIP services for technical reasons. My concern is that as botnets continue to grow, threat actors will rent portions of them to conduct ransom DDoS attacks against smaller businesses. Only time will tell, but if history is a guide, we won't have to wait long. And that's your cybersecurity executive briefing for this week. Before we get into the Q&A section, I just want to mention that the best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn. Remember that the stories presented are selected to be relevant to our audience based on the technologies you've said you're using. If you're using other technologies in your organization and you'd like those covered, please let me know. If you're watching this after the fact and you want to be part of the next live session, visit clocktowertech.com/cxb.html. Right there. And register for the next call. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment letting us know what you learned or what could have been more clear. Until next time, stay safe, stay in touch. Together, we are secure.